thoughts on that. But first, I think we absolutely have to start with what the Guardians did yesterday. Triston McKenzie, first start of the season, coming off the DL where he had the bad shoulder, and that came on about midway through spring training. And at the time, we thought, this is a 2-month thing. Where will they be on June 1st? We talked about it on the show. I expected, you asked me, point blank. I said, I think they'll be 500 when he comes back. Now, they were significantly under 500. I think right now they're 5 games under 500.
Yeah.
However, I still think they're in the hunt because of what the Twins have done. McKenzie went 5 innings, struck out 10 hitters. So 2 out of every 3 of his outs were strikeouts. He allowed 1 hit, walked a guy, looked electric, had Triston McKenzie stuff with a very rested and healthy right arm. And that certainly bodes well for the Guardians moving forward. What do you make of the split? What do you make of McKenzie's effort?
Man, the split was huge. We talked about it. I think the Guardians were like 7 games under 500. And you go into a set with the Minnesota Twins, right? And if you lose those games are essentially worth 2. And I think in the broadcast, I think that the Twins announcer or broadcaster was saying that pretty much throughout the season, these 2 teams have been equally matched. They match up very equally against each other. And so what you wanted to do is you needed to come with at least a split when you talk about what they were doing. Now, there's a couple things that I was really impressed by. The fact that you bring Triston McKenzie out, and you think about it, this is your first outing. It could be a lot of things happening. You could get hit around. You could lose, you could not have the velocity you had. But the thing I was so encouraged by was the fact that his command was off the charts.
Yeah.
It just seemed like he was hitting all the spots. He never gave him anything really good to hit. He mixed it up. The velocity was still there. And by the way, just the confidence level, right? Like I think he felt like he knew the team was reeling a little bit. I think he felt the fact that, I don't know how much run support I'm going to get, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here and give him a little swag. And they talked to him about it before. He said how energized he was to be back in the dugout and get the feeling and camaraderie with the guys. So when you come out your first outing, 5 innings, 10 strikeouts, now all of a sudden you start to see what the Guardians could look like when you have a Bieber and a McKenzie at the top of your lineup and some of the young guys fill in, and now you're like, wow, I wish we would have had that guy at the beginning part of the season, because I think if they would, he showed just how good he was in that outing, but he showed you what the Guardians could potentially have looked like. And I don't think if he's pitching, I don't think they're 5 games out. I think they're neck and neck or even in first place, given the fact that how well McKenzie pitched.
They're 3.5 out right now. If McKenzie had been on the bump for the first 2 months, they're in first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. He is their ace. And I know that we've kind of whispered that and we've hinted around that for the last maybe year and a half.
Yep.
But when I first saw him kind of overcome his early rookie jitters, and you just look at the stuff, his electric exploding fastball that sometimes cuts into righties, his devastating curveball that if you're sitting on a fastball, you have 0% chance of going to get, especially when he starts it for a strike and it finishes outside. He is now the Guardians' ace. I think it's official that the passing of the baton from Shane Bieber has happened to Triston McKenzie. So I think if they have him for the first 2 months, that's 8 starts.
Yep.
You're going to tell me that that's not the difference in 4 games? I think it absolutely is, and I think they're in first place.
I think what Jay just said was a great setup, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I'm 35. I remember Bartolo Colon.
Yeah.
I've seen Cliff Lee. I've seen CeCe Sabathia. I've seen Corey Kluber. Triston McKenzie is next up in terms of Cleveland Guardians' great aces. This is a guy who broke through last year. He finished in the top 10 in every major AL category.
Yeah.
190 strikeouts. Would he pitch 191 innings? ERA at 2.96. He showed that he was here. And when he had his stuff, quote unquote, he can be one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball. You talk about the command. You talk about the attitude. One of the things I learned in management track training when I worked for the city was communication, and the vast majority of that is nonverbal. His nonverbal communication showed me that he was in total command, that he had the discipline, that he was confident in his rehab, that he was confident in his stuff. And I'm looking at it like, damn, if he had been here from the start of the season, you're right. We are sitting in first place. The Twins and the Guardians mirror each other, right?
They do. They're very similar.
Very similar team. And if you look at the pitching stats for the Twins now, they're unprecedented. We don't see Minnesota starting pitching the way that they do.
And I allege it's not going to hold.
I agree with that.
I think that they've arrived. They're better than what they've been in years past. But I just think that they're doing it with a little bit of smoke and mirrors, and I think that the Guardians pitching staff is one I trust more long term.
Absolutely.
And that's obviously with Plesac now designated for assignment. You get rid of that. He's been a problem. He's been their weak link all year. Who knows what's coming next for Cal Quantrill? You know, they've got the injury that gives them time with him. But as I look at the state of the Guardians today, I think that their starting rotation is in no order. I think McKenzie he has better stuff right now. I still think Bieber is the veteran. I trust him more in a playoff game. I think it's Bieber and McKenzie as 1 and 1A. And after that, I think the kids have arrived. I think Tanner Bybee is exactly who we had hoped he would be. He showed that on Saturday. And I think Logan Allen is also the guy that we had hoped he would be. So now you've got 4 entrenched starters. If Aaron Savali, who looked good in his comeback, if Aaron Savali can return to the form he showed 2 years ago, that is a formidable starting 5. That's, I'm not going to say it's the best starting 5 in baseball. It's not. It's in the conversation for top 5. And if you can pitch like that, you always have a chance. In the playoffs, you're going to have to hit home runs. We saw that last year. But I think if you can get those 5 into a rhythm and a rotation, this division is theirs for the taking.
Jay, let me ask you this question. Usually, generally speaking, if you are out of contention and you don't think that you can win a World Series or go deep in the playoffs, you usually trade a player,
right?
Or usually a pitcher or somebody who needs a bat or whatever the case may be. Do you see or can you foresee a situation in which they have enough confidence in some of the young guys and they feel like if we're still in contention and we still get rid of and trade Bieber because we feel we have enough to compete? Do you think that they could trade Bieber even though they're not out of it and they think they can still go further? Is that an option on the table even though it's a little unorthodox?
I think, yes, I think you're right. I think everything's on the table, and here's why. On Friday, I pretty definitively said they're not going to win the World Series, not with this team.
Right.
And I still stand by that. I mean, they aren't just power-starved. It's almost a drought.
Yeah.
And when they hit a home run now, it's eye-popping. You don't expect it. I do think, though, that you're starting to see real signs of life in the offense. And not just sparks here and there. There's fires all over the place.
Will Brennan
with the home run on Saturday, the big home run. Yeah. So I think what you're seeing here is a Guardians team that's asking the exact same questions we are. What the hell are we going to do? And I think that their best friend now is they do have time. There's 8 weeks before the trade deadline hits. So you can sit back, you can let the team determine the path. If the team goes 17-21, and by the way, I do think that that's possible. With their schedule and this team, it's possible to rip off, a 17 out of 21 or whatever run. Suddenly, if you do that, you've got a 6 or a 7 game lead. When you look at your record and compare it to everybody else in baseball, it's not the huge gap that you currently see. So I hope they're patient. I hope they're talking to people, because if it does prove that this is just wheels spinning in the mud, then you can pull the trigger and make the best team or the best trade for the team when you move Bieber in July.
And just to piggyback off what Jay just said, if I'm Chris Antonetti, I woke up this morning pretty damn confident in what I have in Triston McKenzie, pretty confident that he's going to be able to move forward. So if I thought about moving Shane Bieber, okay, yeah, I'm more confident in moving him, knowing that I do have a true ace.
Right.
But in the same breath and in the same token, if the Guardians can turn this thing around offensively and become more consistent, hitting and scoring runs, now I got Bieber and I got McKenzie.
Yeah.
And I trust that more moving forward than I do the younger guys as we get closer to playoff time. You see what I'm saying?
I second that. I mean, we don't know what Allen's going to be in a postseason game. We don't know what Tanner Bybee's going to be. Look, there are instances where rookies step onto that stage and are up to the moment.
True.
Historically, they are not.
Just don't happen.
It doesn't happen. So the way I look at it, you're definitely going to be patient here. But you're right. With McKenzie, if McKenzie had come out, went 3 2/3, gave up 5 runs, and maybe talked about some shoulder tightness after the game, and that's still a possibility, and start 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, then I would really be like right now my meter's kind of in the middle.
Right.
But with each series, you tend to watch it go one way or the other. Like I said, if they rip off 8 of 10, you're probably a game out of first place, maybe even depending on how the Twins play in first place at that time. I don't think the optics are going to be favorable for a trade if the Guardians are in first place when they move Shane Bieber.
Yeah.
Explain that to your
Right.
your starved fan base.
Because to Jay's point, I don't think the Minnesota Twins starting pitching and how they've pitched to start the season, I just don't think that's going to hold. Because that's not who they are.
No,
you know,
I agree.
At the end of the day, who you really are, it shows itself. That's not them. This is who we are.
That's why it's 162.
Yeah, and this is,
sometimes we make snap judgments off 60 or 90
Exactly.
or even 120 games. It's a marathon for a reason. It's a battle of attrition. The Guardians are in the position they're in for one reason: their depth in their minor leagues in pitching. So when you have a Plesac completely explode, and you have a Cal Quantrill who's nowhere near the guy he was last year, you just pick up the phone, you call Columbus, and you say, Tanner, come on up.
Let's go.
You pick up the phone, Logan Allen, we need you. Most teams don't have that luxury. Most teams are bringing up guys that clearly aren't major league ready, and then they lose those games. Well, because they've got such depth in the pitching rotation, they're able to make the call to the bullpen, so to speak, and stay alive. So I think Triston McKenzie made it very difficult on the Guardians management, and I think that's a problem that they're welcome to have. But again, I don't think you trade a Cy Young pitcher with a lot of postseason experience when you're in first place.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. It's kind of hard to sell to not only your fan base. It's kind of hard to sell to the clubhouse. You can't. Like,
good point.
How does that
Don't tell Jose Ramirez
Right.
we're moving on Justin
exactly.
Bieber.
Now, there's one guy I wouldn't mind him moving on is Ahmed Rosario. Now, listen, when can we get him up out of here? Like, I'm just saying, bro, I know you're loyal, Tito. I mean, they got Arias playing every position. He's a DH, first baseman, right field. I'm like, look, can we get him a look at shortstop at his natural position? Because he cannot be playing worse. He can't do worse than what Rosario was doing, and he's still getting 2-hole. He's batting in the 2-hole. He batted him in the 2-hole pretty much the whole first half of the season. I'm like, I don't get it, man. Like, what is it he sees?
Listen,
Well, I don't get it either. I think his trade value is down significantly from where it was last year. He had a terrific season last season.
yeah, he did.
I'm still not ready to give up on him. I'm not. I know Tito loves him in the clubhouse. He loves his presence on that team. He's just hoping and praying that we're going to see the 2022.
Right. Wish it on a dream.
You
Well,
educate.
sometimes.
You educate me on this one, okay? When I look at the Guardians' pitching rotation, their farm system, the whole nine, it reminds me of how Ohio State rolls out corners and wide receivers
exactly
year
right.
in and year out.
Yeah.
So if I trust that this farm system is going to stay in place, why not dig into that farm system and trade some of those assets to get some power now?
Well,
why does it have to necessarily be Shane Bieber that has to go?
I think, well, Bieber's obviously coming up on a free agency year, not next year, but the year after. So they have control of him for a year and a half. So the dilemma that they're in, do they, it was the same thing that they've been in this dilemma 100 times since the 90s. They breed stars to trade them because they can't afford to sign them to second contracts. And I know this has been a long-running debate. You know, you've got to start doing that. If they'd have signed Frankie Lindor, it would have been an absolute abject failure disaster. A small market team can't afford a $30 million, $40 million a year player. They just can't. And the way the Guardians have done it, I know they haven't won the ultimate prize, but they're in the hunt a lot, and that's what you have to ask for. So Bieber is either going to walk at the end of the 24 season, or they're going to trade him before that to get something for him. The later you get towards his control, the less you're going to get for him.
This sounds an awful lot like Donovan Mitchell. We'll talk about that later, right?
Yeah, there are some similarities. So what do? Do you trade him now and get a haul? Or do you roll the dice and keep him in the fold for another September, October push to see what happens?
Because
to give yourself a chance. Because I will say this. I do think they could get some nice prospects for them, for Bieber. But I don't think they're going to get anybody that's going to help them this year because you're going to trade him to a contender.
Yeah.
Right.
A contender's not going to give up a meaningful bat unless it's the Dodgers. And the Dodgers have so many bats and so many stars in their farm system, they might be able to afford to do it. So that might be a prospective landing spot this year. But it's just like Frankie. They traded him before the start of the last season of his control. So the Mets knew they were going to have him for a full season. Mm-hmm. In Bieber's case, you're telling a contender, we're giving you 2 shots. So we want more in return. Mm-hmm. Now, again, the day they do it, their chances of winning a World Series, which aren't great right now, are going to go down dramatically, in my view. McNuggets, you got a question?
Yeah, it's about Bieber and potentially trading him while they're in first place. You said on Friday, and I think we've all touched on this in the past, even if they're in first place in this division, doesn't necessarily make them legitimate World Series contenders.
It doesn't.
And although it may be extremely difficult to the fan base and the rest of the guys in the clubhouse to say, hey, we're in first place, but we're going to ship away our perceived ace, I'm not sure this team, as currently constructed, is a World Series contender. So
I'd say right now they're not.
They're not. And I think anyone who says they are is
However, it's baseball. And I'll remind you
anything could happen. The
that
Braves
in
are
21,
under 500.
The Braves at August 10th were under 500. Yet they went all in at the deadline. They had their best player was hurt. They were without Acuna.
Yeah, he was out. So I guess
but
my
they
question,
won the World Series. So it's easy to sit here and say the Guardians are not going to win the World Series. But I can't guarantee that, and neither can anyone else.
Didn't the Washington Nationals have like one of the worst records in baseball at the All-Star break a couple years ago?
Same thing.
They won the World Series.
They catch fire. And this, by the way, was after they had moved from their cornerstone. Their cornerstone stars were Steven Strasburg
and Harper.
and
Bryce Harper, right?
And Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
And once they move off those guys, the general thought is, they're restocking, they're reloading, and they go on and they win a World Series. So it's baseball. The best team doesn't always win. We know that. You know, in basketball, what we're seeing right now in the NBA, we've never seen before and will likely never see again. There is an 8 seed that currently is sitting in control of their own destiny if they win their home games to win the NBA championship. That's never happened.
Yeah.
And many thought it never could or would happen.
Trade.
Not only were they an 8 seed, they were seconds from being eliminated from even making the playoffs.
Man, it just goes to show you, man, coaching, like, I know people diminish that. Coaching matters, man. Like, the way you go about doing your business and your philosophy and your scouting departments and finding gems and stuff like that, that counts, man. Like, you know, not to pivot to the NBA, we're not really getting there, but, you know, they're playing with undrafted guys. These guys are.
You look at their roster,
It's crazy.
you would expect that they would
Martin,
be a team on the bubble of making the playoffs.
Vincent, you got Strus, they got Kevin Love.
We just kicked him to the curb.
Oh, by the way, there's a clip of I think Duncan Robinson.
We'll play it. Don't worry.
Is talking about how what the hell was the Cavs thinking when they gave this guy to us.
We all sat here and said the same thing. This guy will give us zero help in the playoffs.
It's funny, we talking about this. Kevin Love is playing in the finals right now with Miami. Jan Gomes was on that championship team with the Washington Nationals.
I know. You're right. I mean,
So-
it's happened a lot where Cleveland retreads go somewhere else.
But just a couple things that I had on my mind when it came to Triston McKenzie. Jay, I really love this kid. I really think that
I do too.
He's that dude. You know, you go back to when he made his MLB debut, he had the second most strikeouts of any Cleveland Guardians player in franchise history with 10. I think it was somebody with 11 in 1964. Then you come back the next year, you set a franchise record for consecutive strikeouts in a game with 8.
Yeah.
You know, and then last night or yesterday afternoon, he becomes one of 3 Guardians pitchers to have 10 Ks with 79 or fewer pitches.
It's unreal.
It's like
he did it in 5 innings.
In 5 innings.
I mean, that extrapolates to 18 strikeouts if he'd have gone the distance.
When this dude is on his A game, it is hard to find too many pitchers in the game right now that's better than him.
I'm with you. I'm with you, and that's not hyperbole.
No.
The only problem is the injuries. You talked about Steven Strasburg. When you got, it's just unnatural. Like, Nolan Ryan is a freak of nature, right? But it's just unnatural to be able to throw the ball like that. When you got that much movement, the amount of torque you put on your elbow, your body, your lats, your upper body, your traps, your biceps, your triceps, your forearms. Like, these kids are coming out here.
And he's 160 pounds.
And he's like soaking wet, if that, right? I'm watching on YouTube. They got kids, like in high school throwing 100. They got one kid from Tennessee threw 105 one time. And I'm like, that can't be natural. So when you look at it for the long-term, viability of Triston McKenzie, all you just wonder is what can he give you? How is his body going to betray him? Is he going to be able to come out here and throw this way for the next 6 years? Because here's the thing. The Guardians are dependent on when they get their little prospects to a point where they're up here, they automatically have to perform because there's no help coming. There was they count on pitching so much that there's no room for error when it comes to okay, we got our top 3 in our rotation is better than your top 3. That's the way they're going to win games, 2-1, 3-2 games. So they need guys to be available, and you see the impact of Triston McKenzie if he's not available and when he is available. So I just hope he's able to stay healthy.
I do too. I worry about it. You talk about you love his stuff, and there's a lot to love there. When he came back to the dugout and just joined the team in the dugout, and they talked about this on the telecast, Bart and Rick did, everything changes. Everything changes. I said Bart, Matt, and Manning talked about this. He is a spark in the dugout. He's fun. Guys gravitate to him. His teammates love him, and I really think that I keep looking for dates to circle on the calendar and say, okay, this is where the Titanic started pumping water out and fixing the holes, and I think it was yesterday. But you can almost go back to the date he joined the team in the dugout. He's been back for a couple days in the dugout. Because even though they lost the first 2 games of this series, there was no panic. Logan Allen went out. Tanner Bybee went out and pitched great Saturday. He came out and completely stopped the bleeding yesterday. They got a couple of timely hits in the 7th inning. So the bats have to fire. They have to. They cannot all be this bad after being so good last year. If they can find their form again or even come close to it, then this is a playoff team. I don't think they can win the World Series, but like we've talked about, the Braves, the Nationals, a million other examples, the best team doesn't always win the World Series. Get in and you have a chance. And that's what this team is trying to do. And I think that Terry and I think that Antonetti and everybody in this organization is watching every game with bated breath, hoping that they see that, okay, this is the turnaround is underway, and now we're going to our point on the horizon.
You just struck a nerve. It's almost like Tito is operating as if he's Eric Spoelstra, right? He knows who he is as a skipper.
Sure.
And I think he knows the potential of his team.
Right.
Just get me to the dance, and we can figure it out from there.
And that's it. And that's why I was glad that you brought up coaching matters, because what we're seeing in the NBA might give the Cleveland Guardians front office pause for moving on Bieber right now. And here's why. If the Heat had traded Jimmy Butler, where are they now?
They're home.
They got a lot of prospects and they're looking towards the future.
The house?
But they're definitely golfing.
On vacation?
Yeah, they're not coming home with now being in control of winning another NBA championship. But they trusted the process. Pat Riley trusts Eric Spoelstra, and between the two of them, I think they can solve a Rubik's Cube in 6 seconds. They're those guys. And what we've seen them do throughout these playoffs is have their backs against the wall and look like they're on fire in the regular season, in the play-in game, in the Celtics series when they went from up 3-1 to down 3-3 or tied 3-3 going to Boston, they've always found a way to figure it out. So if the Guardians are looking at what's going on in Miami and they trust this roster like they should, then maybe they hit pause on a Bieber trade. You can still move him at the end of the season. You can still move him next June. You don't have to move him right now. It might be the smartest play, but it's going to be a hard sell to a fan base that is starved for winning.
Yeah,
So what do they have to be? I look at it like I'm going to the 4th of July.
Right? I want them 6 games over 500.
6 over.
And that's a month to get there, which means
Yeah.
they got to go roughly. They've got to go 24-6 over 30. That would be 18 over 500.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not. They don't even have to do that. They have to go 20-10.
20-10 and put them 6 over. That's my next goalpost right there. I'm looking at 4th of July.
That's a month from today.
Can you get it even or be above? Like, I would like to see them in first place if they're going to make a move. And then I like this, man. So now if you're in contention and by the 4th of July, now you could go to the front office and say, okay, well, now you could get us a bat, right? And they would be hard-pressed not to do it given the fact that they've seen what this team is about and they've clawed back into contention. And you're going to have to win the division to get into the playoffs.
I don't think a wild card's coming from the Central.
No, it's not.
They're all coming from the East, maybe one from the West. I'm not sure. But Gabriel Arias is a guy that has a lot to do with this team's future. He's been next up for the Guardians for a while. They're giving him consistent at-bats. They're giving him every opportunity to win a job. So much so, they're putting him wherever they need to get regular at-bats. Yesterday, he was at first base. Not his position, not even close. People that are superficial fans of baseball say first base has got to be one of the easiest positions, right? You just catch the ball when the infielder throws it to you and field whatever's hit to the far right side. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's technical in the way catching is technical. Footwork matters. A lot of things matter. We saw a play yesterday, and I know that I think it depends on which side of the fan base you sit. Royce Lewis hits a ball deep in the hole at third, an incredible throw from Ramirez, and you see what happens to Lewis at the end of the play, who, by the way, is just back, I think this week or last. He tore his ACL last year. He's a terrific young player. The Twins love him. There were some moments watching this where you didn't know if this young man was going to get up and walk off the field. Look at this still right here.
Oh, wow.
His head is completely bent back. And a lot of folks online were giving Arias a lot of grief, saying that this was his fault. Some, I think, were even intimating that he did it intentionally. This was not
That's
intentional
absurd,
play.
by the way.
That is completely.
Absurd.
I did see a couple of. It wasn't the overwhelming Twins fan, but I saw a couple Twins fans that were intimating that, he did this on purpose. Look, he went deep to get the throw because that's where the throw took him. The problem was his footwork was wrong. He had the wrong foot on the bag, number one. Now, that is elementary. Once they tell you you're playing first base, you have to understand that your right foot has to go on the bag. Now, if you have to come off the bag to get the ball, you do whatever you have to do to go get the ball.
Yeah.
And that means sacrificing the base hit.
If
he had his left foot on first base.
If he has I played first base. So if you have your right foot on the bag and you have to go reach and backhand and scoop and dig that ball out, your left leg is going to be outside. So your leg is not even in a baseline or the path of the
I'll
base
give you a little bit of like just anatomy as to why this happened. He is a right-handed player.
Okay.
Clearly. He's a shortstop by trade. This is why you can't put a right-handed first baseman on first base. Almost all of your first basemen are lefties. When you're stretching to get a ball, I don't know if you can follow me here, but I'm going to stand up. When you're stretching to get a ball and that's your side, your inclination is to go like this. You want to stretch out with your glove hand.
Yeah.
So you're going to put that foot on the bag and you're going to stretch this way. I don't understand exactly. I'm sure it was just an instinct of his, but he just puts the wrong foot on the base, and that's probably because he's right-handed. He's just reaching out to catch a ball, and it was a fluke injury. It was not intentional. For those that I saw a lot of people saying, well, learn how to play first base. Well, that's what he's doing. He's got as many games at first base in the major leagues as the entire audience put together. Right. We think we know how hard it is to play first base, but we really don't until you're in that moment. And it was just unfortunate. Luckily, he was okay.
When I seen it, freak accident, freaked me out. You can't avoid human nature. You can't avoid the human aspect of things are just going to happen, right? Like you alluded to, he's learning how to play first base. It's a bang-bang play. He's trying to do his job. He's trying to do everything he can to get the ball to make sure his foot stays on the base to get the out. We just got finished talking about how big this game was and how every single play mattered.
Sure.
It's a bang-bang play. Both teams know they need this win. These type of things happen. I'm just glad he's okay. He could have been paralyzed or worse. But thank God none of that happened. And so for people to come after him and saying, well, he did this on purpose, yeah, absolutely. He's in this baseline, but he's learning. He's learning on the job as he go. Sandy Alomar, I'm pretty sure, is reviewing the tape with him today, and they're going over those techniques.
Right.
He's learning, Jay, like you said. I just think it's crazy that people would just automatically draw this conclusion, well, this was purposely done. Like, no malice at all.
It's a bad fluky play.
It's a nothing burger. People just, a lot of times, be honest with you, but it's a lot of times that people, and I don't believe that you got to automatically play a sport to understand a sport, but sometimes people are casual fans, and so they go to he tried to hurt somebody level way too much. Like, It's like nobody's really trying to be, like, that does him no good. At what point? Why would he? I understand it was football. Why would he flip somebody going to first base? Don't make no sense. No, nothing burger.
He had the wrong foot on the bag.
That's it.
And now I will say, and I hate to do this because the young man was almost injured badly, but there's also the base runner has an obligation too, to himself, to his own physical safety. He could have, and you see this a lot. He could have hit the far right corner of the bag, knowing that you could see when he was 3 steps away, this guy's in my path.
Mm-hmm.
Right. At that point, there's things you can do. You can run to the far right side of the bag, hit it, and veer immediately into foul territory to avoid a collision. Now, I know it's all bang bang, but smart base runners have been in this exact same spot and they avoid contact. So you got to do what you got to do. It was a bang-bang play. It all happened very quickly. But there are scenarios where the base runner can avoid that nasty collision. So you have to sometimes anticipate that and see it coming. All right, you have some ad reads, right? And then we're bringing Boogie in.